Welcome to WowBiz Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. This is an exciting show. It's full of substance. This is an opportunity for you to, if you want to grab a paper and a pen or whatever, but we're really coming into a moment that is defined not just by change, but by transformation. And people in the state of Nebraska, some of them are like, whoa, hold on. Let's just stick with what we got here and keep doing that as well as we can. Then there's a large group, and it's getting larger and larger, and these are the people that are concerned about the fact that we're losing so many young people, many of them very bright, and as a result of that, the percentage of young people in the state, just on a percentage basis now, is getting slowly smaller. The older folks, retirees and so on, that segment's getting larger. Again, slow, but steady. So it's a worrisome idea. How are we going to get enough businesses to come to Nebraska so that they can generate revenue and pay taxes and of course, handle that issue? How do we get these young people to come to our state and enjoy the life that is waiting for them and the career that is waiting for them? But anyway, the answers to all these questions, there's no direct answer unless you want to talk about marketing and advertising and salesmanship and so on. That would be the primary topics that would kind of guide us down this particular road. But nevertheless, well, in fact, I've got a little quote here. I'm going to came out of the New York Times about a year ago, I guess it is. But here it is, and I've kind of retyped it here. But I'm going to read it to you if you don't mind. It's very short. It says, "The status quo in Nebraska is unsustainable." That's what it says. If young people won't stay in Nebraska, taxes will have to go up. Now imagine you're sitting in the board of directors, some company over in St. Louis or Des Moines or Leavenworth, Kansas, whatever, and they're thinking about expanding. They've got some distribution centers set up in the Midwest, and they're thinking about coming to Omaha, and then they hear a quote like this, see? And so they say, man, I don't know, it could be tough to find the right talent, it could be difficult to get everything that we need to kind of ramp up and optimize and leverage, all the resources that we have. And most importantly, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, is how all these resources, departments, people, technology, equipment, how it all comes together. This is the key idea. And we know that because we talk about AI. Only about 20% of all business people out there right now know much about AI. They're not really practicing it that much, but they are doing something with it. They're fiddling around with it, trying to figure out how to utilize AI, but 80% of the time, not really involved. And this is a very, very serious consideration. So I'm going to get right down to it now, and I'm going to skip over to something called a business model. Some of you go, oh, sure, we know about that. Others, by the way, there are many others, they'll say, I don't really know what a business model is. So let's just answer that very quickly. It has to do with what happens, whether it's the product, the service, the customer, all the kind of the pieces of the puzzle that add up to creating value and profit, right? You get those two things coming together in a variety of different pieces, you're moving them around. And so that's what a business model is, very roughly speaking, and what it does. But, as things continue to change rapidly, very fluid out there in the world that we operate in, I'm going to take my hat off. Before I do that, by the way, I'm going to get into this in a second. Recently on this show, I mentioned the importance of a personal brand. A personal brand. In other words, we know what a car looks like. A Chevy looks this way, and a Cadillac looks that way, and we get that. We kind of get a feel for those models and how they come across every year and so on. But people, right? People. If you talk to, some of the officials and leading business leaders in this area and say, what's really the most important thing in getting this economy going and doing a little better insofar as recruiting and so on. And eventually, rather early probably, they will say, talent. Talent. People. Business is first and foremost about people. And whether or not we can assess talent as we visit with people initially and how we can coach or bring out talent inside of them and really find out what it is that drives them to excel, because we're not going to be standing next to them every minute. They're going to be doing certain things. They've got the basic functionality and responsibility, but they also are looking for different ways to excel, different ways to extend this or that. You know what I'm talking about there. And those are the people that enjoy their work and are talented enough to say, well, let me see if I did this and I did this. But if they're at home, if they're a remote worker at home, they don't even know really who the person is, that their desk is set up kind of next to yours when you go into the office, but you usually don't that much. And there's this person, but you don't really know them that well. So they don't really talk or help each other succeed. You see where I'm going right here? Talent is everything, and yet we've divided up the talent. We divided up all the careerists. Many, 60, 70% of them are working at home at least 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week. So that is a fair amount of time, and it becomes difficult to really find how to pull teams together with people who will actually lean on each other, trust each other, and so on. Well, anyway, but all of that means talent and human beings are extremely important, and that's why personal branding, oh yeah, that guy, I see him, he always wears a black sport coat, right? Doesn't he come by here? Yeah. I know him. I chatted with him a little bit. See, that's how our business sector of our entire economy is turning into that. And so you do need to have some kind of a way to say, yes, this is me. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not good at. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that. Definitely not just the clothing, by the way, but there's something much deeper, and that is their thinking style. And there's about 7 different thinking styles. And if I get a moment here, I might have to take a moment before I get into this business model topic that I mentioned to you earlier, because it's big. I'm going to save it towards maybe the last portion of the show. But yeah, scientists have figured out that we have 7 types of intelligences. In other words, we have, brains that excel in the neurology and the connections that take place and so on. It varies, 7 different ways. And there is a most popular way, and I'll mention that to you right off the bat. And this bothers me a lot. It applies to the business workforce, but it also applies to education, applies to elementary school. Okay, so I'm going to mention this, and you might want to be thinking, wonder how I fit into that schema, right? So the first and most popular type of intelligence is what we call logical mathematical. Logical mathematical. Now you'll know that. You've all gone through school, and we had to learn how to do math, and we had to learn how to write a certain way, and so on. So that is a very popular type of brain set, and all the schools play to that. This is what they think the students should all turn out and be and act like that. But then there's some more. There's 6 more. There's linguistic. Those are people that have a natural ability to speak. Those are linguistic intelligence. Then there are others that have spatial intelligence. They're very sensitive to where they're sitting and the environment, how it affects their moods. Then we have another type of intelligence. My wife, by the way, plays to this, and that's musical intelligence, where everything feels better when you sing it, and there's a hymn or a harmony to almost anything you see in front of you. In other words, it doesn't have to be literally music, but there has to be something happening in front of you that is similar to the way music is organized. Then we have kinesthetic intelligence, all right? We're naming all of these types of intelligence, and some of them are not so popular in our educational academic type organizations. So kinesthetic, we know what that is. Then there's, interestingly, interpersonal and intrapersonal types of intelligence. Interpersonal, of course, are people who are good conversationalists, like to get around, chat, they're good friends. He's my buddy over there. We're interpersonally, share all our secrets and so on, all that kind of stuff. But then intrapersonal is very interesting. These are people who know themselves. They know who they are. at least better than most people do. They pay attention. The word consciousness, even if you're only 10 years old, is a natural word for you to kind of assimilate and understand what that means to be intelligent intrapersonally. Well, anyway, I'm Lynn Hinderaker. Thanks for watching. We will get back to you very, very soon. I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about this business model idea. And this is very interesting. This is a time to really be thoughtful and think about how do we organize our business? What are we really trying to do with it? Maybe we should be doing something else other than what we're doing right now. And every one of those considerations can be fit into and answered by the right business model. Maybe you're not living up to what the business model suggests. That wouldn't be that unusual. A lot of people, it's like a strategic marketing plan. You put it up on the shelf and walk away. But a business model is deep because it has, oh my goodness, 7, 8, 9 facets or dimensions. And I'm going to ask you all these questions. It's going to be very thoughtful this afternoon. And I appreciate you checking in with us here at WowBiz Nebraska. I can't wait to share this other stuff. But we've got a sponsor coming right up, an unusual sponsor, appropriate, by the way, for just about every young person and then older people that are still trying to fit into the business market and segment in our population. And these are the questions that you're going to learn about very, very soon. So we'll be right back with you. Thanks so much for watching the first portion of WowBiz Nebraska. I'll see you soon. The sponsors of WowBiz Nebraska are a company here in the Omaha area called Charisma Coaching, and that's spelled with a K, Charisma Coaching. This is an exciting industry, this coaching industry, and it's helping a lot of people, good salespeople, strategists, sometimes entrepreneurs. They know what they're trying to get done in their business, but they're struggling when they get out in the field or when they're at meetings and so on, and they don't quite know how to bring people into their world, so to speak. They do understand that it's important to listen, and that's hard to do when you have so much to say and you're so excited and passionate about your business and so on. But that becomes an extremely important thing, because if you can be relaxed, open, articulate, confident, if you can do all that, then you definitely will be able to attract people into your world. And at that point, they are open to what you have to say when it gets back to product and service. But you have to really be a good listener first and foremost, and very relaxed and natural. But also, it's a very important thing that they learn how to speak in public. This would be number one. And the ability to also get their wardrobe, take a close look at what their coloring is and how they dress. They want to make sure that they're kind of contemporary and very current, but they don't want to look like they're trying too hard. It just depends on their kind of their business, and whether it's a conservative industry they're serving, or whether it's the kinds of people that like to have an outside kind of an external stimulus. So it takes a lot of personal confidence, a lot of training. Usually it takes every month, as I understand, Charisma Coaching takes about 3 hours every month for 6 months. So Charisma Coaching is dynamite. You want to check them out on the web. Your return on investment will be tremendous at Charisma Coaching. Thanks. Welcome back to WowBiz Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker, and I appreciate you joining us here. At the end of this particular show, this is where the punch is, the power, what I used to call the juice. Turn on the juice, give it all to me, right? So I'm going to share with you mostly about the business model. We mentioned this earlier in the show, and the impact and power. I'm going to read simple little lines, and then we'll chat about it, whether or not that's a consideration that you would take seriously and reflect upon the business model. Now, we're talking about a 7 or 8 component graphic. That's what we're really doing. And every component, every segment in this, we'll call it a grid or a graphical picture, all kind of adds up. But many companies really emphasize one over the rest of the pieces. For instance, product quality, this would be an example, or distribution, We want to make sure that we can get our products sent out there quickly and digitally, whatever it is, and so on. So as you can see, and of course sales is extremely important, and then there's leadership and kind of a management mindset. These are all pieces that come together in different companies in different ways to maximize their model and maximize their power, their relevance in the market they're serving. But here are some questions I would ask. Let's pretend you're the CEO of a company right now, and I'm talking to you in your field and so on. And I'm going to ask the first question. I said, are you actively monitoring other industries for business model innovations? Now, you're going to see us mention innovation a lot because business model innovation is critical in setting you apart, of course, from your competitors, which might transfer or be applied by you to transform your business or marketplace. In other words, not every single time do you change the model slightly. Let's emphasize this and do better over here and this or that. Sometimes that works great, sometimes it doesn't. Now here's another question. Are you actively monitoring other industries for business model innovations which could transfer into you? Here's another thing that a lot of people don't do, and it's so powerful, and that is talking to your customers. Actually hire somebody who is skilled and has done research before, and go out and talk to past customers, line it all up. Many of them will require a modest fee, so they'll sit and chat with you for maybe 20, 30 minutes or so, and talk about innovation. And if there are any possible innovations that you've skipped over or haven't thought about, or that they particularly think of, oh yeah, some other company in your industry, we heard about this or that, we even did it, So you want to be on top of that. Now all of this is being done for this one reason right here, and you can see it right off the top, and that is new business and new markets. And here in the state of Nebraska, we need to think about this very, very carefully. We like to make our money, but we're not sure exactly if we're going to innovate, and if we do so, how do we do it? Who helps us get it done? And what are the new market segments we're going to serve, and will it be profitable? And what about if we have to give up some other business over here, or some of our core business isn't as powerful as it used to be? So all these questions keep coming up. Now here, this is a very interesting thing. Again, we're talking about innovation. Do all of your employees think of themselves as innovators? This is a very important question. And by the way, as we think about that, I'm going to put this picture up here right now in front of the camera. And you'll see it kind of an artistic image right there. They call it abstract expressionism, I think is what they call it. But the bottom line is, if you look at it for just a couple of seconds, you realize there's a lot of movement going on inside this unusual picture. It feels like something is coming across the page, so to speak, and the different colors, and they're kind of overlapping each other. And this reminds me really of what an innovation initiative or project kind of looks like, because it will disrupt certain industries or certain portions of your business. But you can see as 2 and maybe 3 things coming together, just as they were in the cover of this little booklet here, that in fact we're getting something done. People are resonating. People are sending us little emails or texts saying, I really like this, blah, 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 send me another one, whatever it is. Very interesting. It's one of the most exciting things that can happen to a business leader, is to try something innovative that will definitely position them in a slightly different and better way, and actually have customers say, hey, that is cool. I'm going to use that more often. Thank you. All right. Now, who are the people that spearhead this kind of a project, that go out and they sit down in front of past customers and they set rapport, and what do you think about this? And when I say a word, innovation, what comes to mind? How would you describe that as it relates to this company over here? These are the kinds of questions that take place inside of a focus group, or inside of as I said before, kind of what we would call just an interview. But it's extremely insightful. Not every single interaction leads us that far down the road, but many times it does. And then you go back and you can say, man, the innovation stuff is paying off. Now here's another one. What about if you innovate through joint alliances, come together with other companies and form something special that's no longer available, or isn't being used right now, and you come together and you find some way to set up the money in such a way that you can put a new product out there, you're partnering, and you're setting up something very special as a result of an alliance. Now, a lot of people say, theoretically, that sounds pretty good, but who's going to go out there and find somebody that we can actually partner with, that we can, trust, and they'll follow through, and we don't have to get in some kind of conflict at a trade show or whatever. So how do we do that? And well, frankly, you need to bring in usually an outsider, maybe a consultant or a coach or some kind of an advisor, and they would be charged with the responsibility of identifying different segments. Maybe some of these people are a long ways away. It doesn't matter. Your product and their product can come together productively and create new value, maybe even rebrand and come up with something really cool and exciting that attracts the under 30 crowd and all that. So you can see that innovation has huge implications if you do it right and stick with it. And the other thing, the final thought I'd have is, if you're going to innovate, and I sure hope you are, you're going to fail. There are going to be moments where you're going to say, oh man, I'm embarrassed, this didn't work out, people didn't like it, I thought they would, etc. So you have to remember that you take a visionary challenger kind of a personality. That's not everybody, by the way, but there are people like this. You take those people and you turn them loose. Say, find this, see if you can find something. Maybe there's an overlap. Just figure it out. Get back to me in a couple of weeks. Let me know what's going on. That's how certain people like to be managed, so that they can stick their neck into this industry, realize there's a problem here. Maybe we could solve it over here. Maybe we double up over here with these guys. Let's see if we can't introduce it at a trade show or some kind of an event and see what people have to say. That'll be a cheap way to get surveys done and so on. You see where I'm coming from on this? I'll give you a quick example. I was hired several years ago by a fragrance company, a men's fragrance company up in Chicago. And they've been doing this kind of thing, making colognes, typically for men, for years. They went to the African American trade show, and they realized that there was a big market segment they could target there. So they came back and they said, we want to come up with a lineup of colognes for men, black men, and see if we can't target that, that segment of the population and so on. That's when I got involved. I said, well, let's do a little research. Let's do a little customer interviewing and find out. And then all of a sudden, I did this on the streets of Chicago, Wacker Street, as a matter of fact. And I had a whole lineup of young black men, and there was a beautiful model there to attract the guys to come by and stand and wait and chat with me right there on the street. And we talked about in cologne and all that. And one older gentleman said, I put cologne on 3 times a day. 3 times a day. He said, but the bottle of cologne sometimes breaks in the glove box of my car, and that's a mess, and I hate that. I said, well, what if there was some kind of a packet, some kind of like a barbecue packet where you open it up, and you pull out a little paper that would be soaked with cologne, and it would smell great and all that. Great job. That's a good idea. I would do that and just wipe it on your clothes a little bit and smell great. Move along, and there'd be no broken bottles in the club department. Now, anyway, to make a long story short, this worked out to a degree. This was going into 2008, by the way, which was a terrible recessionary period. But nevertheless, we named them, we designed them, and people were calling and saying, this is so cool. This is innovation. This is an example stepping out of the category, not doing the same thing everybody else did, finding an issue, a problem that we could solve with a soft package rather than a bottle. And of course, the names were all very evocative and interesting and unusual and so on, and even got to preliminary manufacturing before 2008 came, and a lot of wholesalers said, we're not going to do anything new right now. And that's the end of the story. But it's a great example, conducting research, finding a market segment. We changed the business model, see? We shifted it away. We came up with a different angle, a different hook, a whole different audience, very specifically, and then we really went to town on the advertising and the imagination piece. So it's there. It's available to you. You just need to find the right people to help you execute. Be innovative, and remember, a little bit of failure is not a bad thing. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. I'll talk to you again soon at WowBiz, Nebraska. Thanks.